Hey there, if you're new here, it's been 1 year since I've started this YouTube channel, so I thought I'd make a video about my thoughts and experiences so far and what an average channel can expect throughout the journey of making YouTube videos. So the way this video is going to be laid out is first I'm going to compare my initial expectations prior to starting YouTube and the reality for how it's been. And this is going to be broken down into 4 categories, which are statistics, confidence/presentation, consistency, and fun. And then I'm going to go into some of the biggest lessons I've learned from doing YouTube, and finally go into some of my thoughts and plans for the future. The thing about YouTube or any other high potential pursuit is that we often have skewed expectations because we end up comparing ourselves to the very small percentage of people who are highly successful in that particular field. I've definitely been guilty of this myself, which is why I want to start with the whole idea of performance from a statistical perspective and what I thought going into it, and comparing that with the actual end results that I have now. I certainly didn't expect to have 1 million subscribers after 1 year of making videos, but from doing some research prior to starting, it seemed like the general trend or consensus is that it should take you 1 year to reach the monetization threshold. But in my case, that hasn't been true. So right now, at the time of recording, I currently have 164 subscribers. So if you do a linear analysis, it might seem like I'm only 16.4% towards my actual goal of reaching 1,000 subscribers, which is the monetization threshold. But the thing is, YouTube doesn't grow linearly, it grows exponentially, and it follows a trajectory which is often referred to as the hockey stick. This is because for the first phase of growth, it's very flat at the bottom, and it might seem like things aren't growing very rapidly, but then suddenly it reaches an inflection point, at which point the whole growth and trajectory of your particular pursuit, particularly in the case of YouTube, grows very rapidly. Whether or not I'm at that inflection point right now, it's very hard to tell, but all I can say is in the last 4 or 5 days, I've gained an additional 20 subscribers, whereas it took me 10 months or more to reach my first 100. This could be because the last 2 or 3 videos have done particularly well relative to the rest, or it could be because I've reached a point of competency and comfort with making videos, which means I'm now able to make videos more rapidly and they come across as a little bit more professional. So if you told me when I started that after a year I would reach 164 subscribers, I probably would feel a sense of disappointment. However, in the moment right now, I don't actually feel that that's the case because of the other areas that I'm now going to go into. The next one of these is presentation and confidence. And this is the area that really feels like I've grown a lot since starting, and this is evident from comparing my first video to some of my most recent ones. It doesn't happen very often, but if I ever feel deflated based on the performance of a particular video, all I do is go back to where I started and watch a few seconds of the first video that I ever made on this channel and compare it to some of my most recent ones, and it becomes very clear that even though the statistics might not show it, I've clearly gained a lot of confidence and competency when it comes to making videos. I still very much consider myself a beginner, but it is reassuring to know that through 1 year of fairly consistent output, you can go from a complete novice to being a lot more natural in front of the camera. So this brings me on to the whole idea of consistency, and I think I've done relatively well here in that I'm at almost 50 videos, so on average that's pretty close to 1 video a week. Although when I started, it was with the idea and the goal of doing 1 video every 2 weeks, and as I became a little bit more comfortable, I became a little bit more consistent, and this shifted towards 1 video every week. And the final point is on fun. Has it been fun and enjoyable making videos and going through this whole process? And I think it's sort of a mixed bag, I'm going to be honest. It's not all fun and games, although there are individual moments that's very satisfying, particularly when you get a comment saying keep up the good work, or they found this particular video very enjoyable or very informative. That definitely gives you a sense of warmth and comfort knowing that the kind of things that you're doing and all the effort and time you put into editing and making videos has been worth it all along. Because I've largely chosen to do the editing myself, apart from a small window in the middle of the year where I got an editor to do 1 or 2 videos, the rest of the time I've been doing it myself, which of course is a lot of time and effort, but in the long term, I've become a better editor, I've become a lot better at turning ideas into video output, and I think it helps to be able to learn and develop the skill of editing so that by the time if I ever decide to get an editor to do it for me, I'm able to speak and understand the language that they're communicating in. But overall, I would be lying to you if I said it's completely fun throughout the entire journey, every second of editing, every second of recording. Of course, that's not the case. But I think overall, when I zoom out, there's never a time where I regretted making a video. So at times it requires a little bit of grit and perseverance in the same way that it does to go to the gym. But rarely do you go to the gym and actually regret going to the gym. It's only throughout the painful or the more laborious aspects of going to the gym or making videos where it can be not quite as enjoyable as other moments. So what have been some of the biggest lessons that I've learned so far over the past year making videos? And the first one is the whole idea of ambition versus contentment. The thing about this one is that it doesn't just apply to making videos. I think it applies in a generalized context too, and that could be in the form of business or hobbies or sports or health. All of these areas requires some kind of comparison between where you are now and where you want to get to, and that's usually in the form of ambition. It's a pretty tricky one to get right because by definition, the more content you are, the less likely you will feel the need to try and change your current circumstances. But if you're ambitious, then also by definition, you're not quite happy with where you are now and there's somewhere you would rather be in the future. So it's a pretty fine line overall because the more content you are, the more happy and satisfied you are with your life, but the more ambitious you are, the more likely you're going to push yourself to do something better and to better your current circumstances. There is one way of reframing this though that has been quite helpful for me, and that's the idea of being content with the journey rather than being content with the destination or your current results, particularly when it comes to statistics. So if you're doing something ambitious, but you're enjoying the actual process of doing it, then that's the ideal place, because you're not going to be so concerned with where you are relative to everyone else. You're going to be more concerned with how you're doing relative to either your own expectations or how you feel about the process overall. The next lesson is the whole idea of video strategy, and should you go scripted or unscripted when you make your videos. I've actually played around a little bit with this one, as I started off with my first video, 30 lessons in 30 years, and I scripted out some basic points about each lesson. But then I reached a point where I thought, maybe if I script the entire thing, would it actually end up leading to me coming across as more eloquent or more articulate? But then I realized that you actually lose something else in the process, which is fluidity. So pretty much since the 4th or 5th video, I've adopted the same approach, which is to note down prior to making the video some high-level points which will keep me on track and keep me aligned towards the actual point and purpose of the video itself. I'm sure there are YouTubers or content creators who have a more refined or detailed approach to making videos, and that could be in the form of something like a teleprompter. But for now, I'm trying to keep things simple, and that's for one primary reason. I think reading from a teleprompter brings its own set of advantages and disadvantages, but certainly you can work on your presentation to make it seem more natural along the way. However, I think you do lose out on one particular aspect, which is the process of converting vaguely or loosely defined ideas into clear and articulate words. Personally, I think of this as a skill, and the more you practice turning thoughts to words, the more clear, articulate, and coherent you come across. The next lesson I've learned is at what point the journey is most challenging or difficult. Some people claim that it only gets more difficult the more you do it because the expectation increases along with the size of your audience. But personally, I think it's just a different type of challenge, and certainly from an inputs versus outputs perspective, the more you grow and the bigger you become, the less likely it is that you actually have to put in a lot of physical work, and instead it just becomes about making good decisions. This really comes into the whole idea of leverage, and the more leverage you have, the less energy or effort you have to apply in order to reach a certain goal. However, there is one caveat, and that's that when you actually end up growing, often you take on more challenges, which compensates for the fact that you have more leverage for each one of them. The next lesson is that there's a fine line between self-awareness and self-criticism. Self-awareness is generally a good thing as it allows you to become more aware of your own strengths and weaknesses, and in turn this allows you to work on those weaknesses and develop them, as well as to play into your strengths. Self-criticism, on the other hand, is generally not a good thing, as you often end up dwelling on your own failures or inadequacies, and often this can even decrease your motivation, which can hold you back from trying to persist and push with future objectives. My main tip for someone who's generally self-critical is to use positive reinforcement. So do small things that allows you to stack up some evidence that you can then look at that makes you feel that actually you're doing good things and you're better than you initially expected. The thing is, it's easy to make false claims to other people, but it's impossible to lie to yourself. And the only way that you'll believe your own information is if you build up a set of irrefutable evidence and undeniable facts. For example, if you don't believe you're a very consistent person, and slowly you start doing things like going for a walk on a regular basis, and then maybe eventually going to the gym on a regular basis, at some point, if you've gone to the gym every day or twice or 3 times a week, every week for a year, it's very hard to convince yourself that you can't be consistent because this evidence will prove otherwise. And the last lesson is actually one I got from Jordan Peterson, and that is to compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. The reason why this is true is because we all have our own set of strengths and weaknesses, and comparing ourselves to someone else completely disregards the fact that they're dealing with different circumstances and have different things to contend with. In my last video, I covered the whole topic and book of The Unfair Advantage, so feel free to check that out if you're interested in this type of idea. The only caveat that I would say about comparing yourself to who you were yesterday is that this isn't best done statistically, especially in the early days of YouTube, as there's too much variation between videos and you're very much just finding your own feet. When you're in the experimental stage of YouTube, where you're trying to figure out what type of video to make and what type of style that you're going to adopt, it's often confusing to look at the statistics and think that you've gotten better today or gotten worse today, when in fact you're only just trying things out. However, this approach applies a lot more when you zoom out across a wider time frame, but also when you're a more established YouTuber. And my last section of this video is my hopes for the future and the goals of this channel. The first and most obvious one is reaching the whole monetization threshold. And this is something that could take 6 months from now, 12 months, 24 months. It doesn't really matter in many ways, although obviously the sooner the better. But I'm not also going to use some kind of cheat code or hack in order to get there at the expense of authenticity or quality. For example, sometimes I get emails from people claiming that they can help me reach that monetization threshold in a very short space of time without me really having to do anything. But I always go back to the point that if it sounds too good to be true, then it probably is. And the next one is I hope to bring new types of content, but don't worry, this isn't an OnlyFans account. I'm not going to go quite into the details yet, but over the next few weeks or so, I hope to bring different types of content to this channel, and hopefully that adds a different type of appeal to the channel as a whole. And lastly, as the channel grows, generally opens the doors to new possibilities. And this could be to connect with other social media influencers, other YouTubers, other content creators, and generally it just gives you access and build up a network that I think could be useful in the future of this particular channel and this particular journey. So I hope you found this video useful. If you did, feel free to like or subscribe, and if you have any questions or thoughts, feel free to leave them in the comment section down below. Otherwise, I will see you in the next video.